Okay, have we reached the point, welcome back to our third hour, have we reached the point in America where our politicians cannot do anything without the approval and support of industry? Has Obama made a deal with the devil when he negotiated recently with Big Pharma? Can we have democracy while big business is holding the purse strings? I would submit to you that these are very troubling questions that we need to address immediately. Robert Greenwald has a new piece out. It's called a new article or a new movie. It's called Sick for Profit. If you go to sickforprofit.com, you can see it. And, it's a montage of clips. For example, this little piece, this is Elizabeth Edwards talking with Jon Stewart. She's talking about, my favorite guy, Bill McGuire, the CEO of United Healthcare, who took $1.7 billion. Now, yeah, he had to pay back a couple $100 million of that because of fraud, but he took $1.7 billion as part of a 10-year compensation package. Here's Elizabeth Edwards and what she had to say on this.
A few years ago, I think the president of United Healthcare made so much money that one in every $700 that was spent in this country on healthcare went to pay him.
One in every $700 spent on healthcare in the United States went to pay one guy, the CEO of United Healthcare. Now, that's the ex-CEO. The current CEO of United Healthcare, Stephen Hemsley, owns $744,232,068 in unexercised stock options. So, although he's got a $3.2 million a year paycheck, which puts him up there pretty stiff, he's got $744 million worth of compensation. And that's just one guy. And that's just the second largest health insurance company in the United States. And so you say to yourself, how could it be that in the United States of America we have a situation here where the CEOs of these very large corporations are making hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation and millions and tens of millions of dollars just in plain old straight up payroll, traveling around the world in corporate jets, spending it. Well, here's the Cigna's Edward Hanaway spends his holidays in a $13 million beach house in New Jersey. Meanwhile, routinely, health insurance is denied to people. Why is this not in the media? Why is this not the biggest story in America? The size of this industry, the breadth of this industry, the wealth of this industry. Why is it that Jon Stewart is the guy who's interviewing Elizabeth Edwards on this and reporting on it, rather than the CBS Evening News, the ABC Evening News, the NBC Evening News? Why is it? Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, organization that my friend Jeff Cohen helped start. A great organization, fair.org, their website. You've heard me talk about interlocking boards of directors, about this incredible website, theyrule.net. And you go over to theyrule.net and you can click on a couple of companies and it'll say, okay, here's how the boards of directors interlock in these companies. So the question, why is it not being reported? What's really going on with this kleptocracy that we have? We think we have a democracy. A recent study with what FAIR has found is that from the New York Times to NBC, which is owned by General Electric, to CBS, to Time Warner, which owns CNN and Time, to News Corp, which owns Fox, to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, which owns Newsweek, to the Tribune Company, which owns the LA Times and Chicago Tribune, to Gannett, which owns USA Today, all of these companies have boards of directors which interlock with health insurance companies. In fact, here's the actual report. You can read it over at fair.org. A recent FAIR study of 9 major media corporations and their major outlets. And I just gave you the list. Disney, ABC, GE, NBC, CBS, etc. Found connections to 6 different insurance companies. 5 out of the 9 media corporations studied shared a director with an insurance company. 2 insurance companies, Chubb and Berkshire Hathaway, were represented by more than one media corporate director. Now, these are the people who are hiring the people who are running the organizations. These are the people who are setting the policy for the organizations. The study also found crossover between these media corporations and several large pharmaceutical companies. So it's not just the health insurance companies. It's not just Stephen Hemsley, of the CEO of United Healthcare, with his $744 million worth of stock options. That's $750 million. And the last guy who just left 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever it was while I was doing this show, so it's had to have been in the last 7 years. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. As I recall, it was when we still lived in Vermont, so it must have been about 5 years ago. The last guy, Bill McGuire, $1.7 billion. Now his follower, Stephen Hemsley, $744 million in unexercised stock options. The study also found crossover between these media corporations, not just the health insurance company, and several large pharmaceutical companies such as Eli Lilly, Merck, and Novartis, whose profits would be negatively impacted by a single-payer system. In fact, the question the Fair was asking is, why is it that single-payer never gets discussed in the media? Why is it the single-payer is not being debated in the media? Because, if it was debated in the media, it would be debated by politicians. If Barack Obama's birth certificate made it via Drudge to Lou Dobbs to the network news, now you've got 11 Republicans in Congress introducing legislation requiring a birth certificate be produced if you're going to run for president. It gets before Congress. Things get into the mainstream when they're discussed on our corporate media, which is owned by this small handful of very large corporations. For example, in fact, they say for CBS, every media corporation had board connections to either an insurance or a pharmaceutical company. Of the 9 media corporations studied, 6 had directors who also represented the interests of at least one pharmaceutical company. For example, the board of directors of the Chubb Corporation, whose and so, by the way, let me stand corrected. I said all of them. They say, save for CBS. So CBS is the one good guy in this, at least in terms of their board. For example, the board of directors of the Chubb Corporation, whose accident and health division has offered health insurance for over 30 years, they share directors with 2 major media companies, Gannett, USA Today, and General Electric, NBC and MSNBC, and CNBC. By the way, just by coincidence, the searches of the Nexus database of January 1st through June 30th of 2009, and the first 6 months of this year, found only 6 articles mentioning single-payer in USA Today, which is Gannett's major outlet. And one of those was a quote from Bernie Sanders. What a surprise. On NBC News, GE's major outlet, single-payer was mentioned on only 2 occasions in the first 6 months of this year as this huge debate was happening. One was Meet the Press, in which a Republican strategist was condemning it, basically, was saying that a public option would lead to single payer. Oh, God forbid. That would be Mike Murphy. The other on NBC, the other NBC was Tavis Smiley. He named Obama's move away from the plan as one of his concerns after Obama's first 100 days. Very brief mention. At the Washington Post Company, 2 directors are on the board of insurance conglomerate Berkshire Hathaway, whose subsidiary General Re sells health reinsurance. They're the backstop for the health insurance companies. Another Washington Post director, Thomas Gaynor, is the vice president of insurance company Merkle Corporation. In the past 6 months, the Washington Post has published hundreds of articles on healthcare reform, fewer than 25 of which mention single payer. Fewer than 30% of the sources who spoke about single payer in those articles were advocates. So they only published 25 articles, the Washington Post, which mentioned single payer, and of those, 70% of the articles were trashing it. In fact, in all of the first 6 months of this year, in all of the thousands or tens of thousands of news reports, articles, debates, discussions, in all the newspapers and electronic media, television stations and newspapers in America, LexisNexis search showed only 164 articles or news segments during that period that mentioned single-payer health insurance. That was it. Now, I want to tell you what our good friend, Mr. Hemsley, the CEO of United Healthcare, with his $744 million worth of stock options compensation, what he's up to with the Obama administration, the Republicans, and the Democrats, right after this break.